There is a lie that you are telling yourself and others that is ruining your chance to better yourself. Hey, this is Josh. How you doing today? If you ever said the phrase, "I don't have time," then you have fallen into the trap of this myth of "I don't have time." So in the productivity field, this is one of those things that come up that has to be addressed. When we think about being productive and think about trying to get different things done, there's a lot of instances where things are not getting done, tasks not being completed. There are probably just areas in your life that aren't being addressed. And a lot of times, we, myself included, end up using that phrase, "Oh, I didn't have time for that," or I don't have time to focus on X. Realistically, that is just an excuse, that is just putting off those important things that should be really important to us, those things that ought to matter to us, but we're just not putting the time and the focus towards those things. That reinforces us being lazy within our lives. But what if we didn't have to use that phrase? And what if that phrase is actually hiding something else about ourselves? I'll be the first one to admit, I've been guilty of using that phrase for years. I have used that phrase in relation to my relationships, family, friends, personal projects. Whatever I had going on, I often use that phrase to kind of excuse myself from feeling guilty or feeling bad for not putting the focus towards those things. But at the end of the day, I still wasn't putting the energy, the time, the attention to those relationships, to kindle those relationships and pour into it. And projects that I thought were important to me, I wasn't getting done because my priorities were just all over the place. And that word priority is going to come up in just a little bit, so hang on to that. So once I became aware of this concept of "I don't have time," that being the sort of false usage, I had to begin to change that, within myself. It wasn't just a matter of changing my habits, but also changing my verbiage. So this is a very important mindset shift that we have to make, because once we make this shift, it's going to change how we view those different things we have been putting off, those relationships that we have neglected. Are you ready for this? So instead of saying "I don't have time," instead say "it wasn't a priority for me." There's a very real difference there, because it makes the situation a lot more realistic and harsh, because now when we say what really is going on, that priority thing that came back from earlier, we are now acknowledging that it's not about the time that we have to put towards the things. It's what we want to put our time towards. So when we now say "it wasn't a priority for me," that means that particular thing was not as important as something else I wanted to do, like play video games, watch TV, whatever other thing that just is a time waster. And we really do have to be real with ourselves. When it comes to our relationships that are very important, when it comes to our faith walk that is of the utmost importance, when it comes to these personal projects, these ventures that we're getting into that do require time and attention to actually develop and build, we can't any longer fall into that trap of "I didn't have time for that." Now, you might say, of course my family is important to me. Of course my faith walk is important to me. And, I would agree. But if there's some kind of issue there, then what comes to mind is actions speak louder than words. And you might even have valid reasons for neglecting those things, like juggling, that work-life balance, having overtime at work, and just dealing with multiple responsibilities, overall. Although those things are valid, at the end of the day, when you have to bring up those things as reasons why you couldn't engage with your family, or why you couldn't make time for God, or even why those projects you have been called to tackle, you haven't made time for, those are just excuses. And I am trying to be gentle, but we all have the same 24 hours in the day, right? We all only have so much time in the day to get a billion things done. It's up to us what we choose to fill that time with. It's up to us to decide X, Y, and Z is important, A, B, C is not important. There are certain things in our lives that we're going to begin to categorize so that we have a different priority mindset to set aside for those things, and then begin to push away the other things that are time wasters. Now that I'm done, beating you up, how do we stop feeling bad for ourselves? How do we move forward from here? There are three main things I want to touch on that are going to help us to get around this, to get a better idea of our priorities. So the first thing is, if the thing should be a priority for you, make it a priority. So you might have things like working out, exercising, that is not entirely consequential. It's something that could be important to you. I would say that are the easiest to kind of let fall by the wayside. Even though we thought it was important, then we have other things that are, like we mentioned before, our family, our faith walk, our walk with God, things of that nature. Those are like really important, like no matter what. These are the things I would categorize as non-negotiable. So these are the tasks that no matter what is going on in the day, you have to ensure that these things are taken care of. You have to ensure that there's time spent with your family, no matter how many hours you've worked, that there's time set aside for God, no matter how your day is going. And even if exercise or other healthy habit, whatever other thing you want to incorporate in your life, if you value that thing and you want it to be important, put it under this non-negotiable category. Non-negotiable being, it doesn't matter what is going on, these things take priority. All right, so the second thing is, if it's not a priority and you don't really want it to be, don't fight with it. Let it go. So there are things that we kind of get involved with that we want to, put time towards, but it's a struggle to make time for it, like reading a book. It could be working on a new house project. I've got several house projects that I'm trying to finish up, like the patio furniture outside. Hopefully I get to show that later on. Overall, these are things that don't dramatically affect you. So these are things that I would categorize as negotiable, plain and simple. So pretty much you could take it or leave it. These are things that, if you don't get it done throughout the day, there's no tears over it. If there's a struggle in making time for the important things, then begin to assess those things in your daily life or in your week that are negotiable, things that you don't have to work on, so you don't have to put your mind towards those things and then struggle to get those things done while also struggling to get the other things done. There's no point in stressing out over the things that just aren't important to you. All right, so we have the non-negotiable things and we have the negotiable things. For the negotiable things, you want to, depending on what that is, you may have to eliminate those things from your life, from your day, so that you can make time for the things that are really important, time physically and just mental space. When we think about what we're prioritizing, it's all in our mentality and our mindset. Like for me, for example, if I have several house projects on my mind, it's going to hinder my ability to be present with my family, because then I'm thinking, oh, I could be or I should be working on those things, but those things aren't as important as my family. And some of those things I don't even really have to start just yet. Some of those things are just an excuse to get my hands on materials and build something. So, it really doesn't matter. So I just have to eliminate those things because they're negotiable, have more mental space for my family so they can be more present with them. All right. And then the third thing to touch on is, now that we have these things categorized, it's time to get creative. Find new ways to prioritize and make time for those non-negotiable things. So for me, I had to find a good time of the day to spend time with my family, with Brittany working an early shift at school and me working a late evening shift. Our schedules are like way off. And then with Ray, it's hard to make time to be with them for that long. But what I've done is, so now we're kind of in this flow where after I get off work, I got about 2 hours with Brittany and about like an hour with Ray, give or take. So that time is spent, just with them. And that's the time that I have to find in the day to actually have good quality time with them. So for you, think about, can you find any kind of nuggets in the day or nuggets in your week, in your schedule, where if family is a struggle to make time for, you make some kind of time to, connect with them, whether that's over the phone or video call or just some kind of time during the day, before or after work, between schedules. Is there any space where you can set aside to just spend time with them? And is there any me time that you have going on that you can possibly set aside for family time instead? For me, after the family goes to bed, I'm up for another hour or so. That's my me time, the last hour of the day before I go to bed. So, going back to family time, I spend like the 2 hours of time with my family, and then from there, I have that last hour to myself. So there's one big advantage I've been able to take with my job. So I have a kind of job that, depending on how busy we are, especially when there aren't many calls coming in, there's a lot of downtime. I've done this for a few years now with this job, but using that downtime be productive. So instead of waiting until I'm off of work to work on side projects, heck, I was working on the script for this video during my downtime at work yesterday. So I use that downtime to just do a lot of those side projects and even fill in that time with some of the negotiable things like reading a book, putting together or designing some house project materials, things of that nature. So think about that for yourself. Can you make good time, good use of the time you have at work? That downtime, the time you're not doing anything, you might either be on your phone, even the 15-minute breaks or that hour or 30-minute lunch you may have. Is there any way to make good time of those spaces to kind of fill in those negotiable things so that when you're off work, you have more time, more mental space for those non-negotiable things? So all in all, first, change your verbiage, first and foremost, from I don't have time to it's not a priority for me, so that you can understand what is a priority for you. Next, begin to categorize. What are the things that are non-negotiable, things that you have to do and have to put time and attention towards no matter what? And what are the things that are negotiable, the things that don't dramatically affect your life? You could take it or leave it. You don't have to worry about it, so you can focus on non-negotiable. And how can you make time in your day in new creative ways for those non-negotiable things? And how, if at all, can you make some small time for those negotiable things that you do value? So once you have made this shift in your mind, once you have turned this whole verbiage thing around, you're going to start to see those problem areas within your daily tasks, and also hopefully get to prioritize those things that really matter to you a little better. Now, if you want to know more about how you can take this new prioritization into your daily life, click on this video I have next to me that is going to touch on the importance of checking off a to-do list. So I'll see you in that video. In the meantime, deuces.